Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Jan de Man. I work for the Busworld Academy, and I can welcome over 450 participants to this webinar. So very welcome. Now, you know that the Busworld Academy is a worldwide platform for all stakeholders in the bus and coach industry. And being such a platform, we consider that organizing the dialogue between all these stakeholders in this bus and coach industry, including the passengers, is the most efficient way to move this industry forward, which in this case means survive this crisis and come out of it, if possible, even stronger. We already launched 4 global webinars. We have regional webinars going on in India and in China. And this is the first global webinar with Spanish translation to welcome the stakeholders in Latin America, South America, and Spain. So very welcome to you all. Today, we're launching a series of webinars on digital strategies and success stories from leading members of the industry to learn from each other. And learning from each other means that we will ask you to participate very interactively in this webinar. My colleague Hans will explain how you can do this right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Jan. Let me quickly share my screen. There you go. Okay. So in today's webinar, we will use various Zoom tools. At the bottom of your screen, you'll have the Zoom toolbar. First that you will see here is the chat function. This function is only used to chat amongst the attendees, so not to ask questions to the panelists. Okay, so once you push that button, this screen will appear, and here you have the option to choose to talk to all panelists and attendees at the same time. Second function that we will use is the Q&A function. You'll find that here. So this tool is used to ask questions directly to the speakers. If you push that button, then this screen will appear. So what you need to do is just fill in the question right here. You can also choose to do that anonymously if you don't want your name to be shown, and you just hit the send button. Okay. After that, you'll have an overview of all the questions asked by all the attendees, and you also have the option to upvote questions that other attendees have posed. This way, the most important questions will be at the top of the ranking. Okay. You also have an overview of your own questions asked. Next, we'll also use the poll function. There will be several polls during this webinar. These will appear immediately on your screen automatically, so you don't need to do anything for that. The only thing you need to do is to answer the questions, of course, and that you do here. So you just answer the question and you hit the submit button. As Jan already said, we have a Spanish translation for this webinar. To activate this or to go to the Spanish channel, you just go to the interpretation function, which is also in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom. So when you click on that, you can choose the various languages. So today that's Spanish and English. So if you want to hear Spanish, please click on the Spanish channel. And you also have the option to mute the original audio. So the speakers will talk in English. If you do not want to hear that in the background, please click the mute original audio button. Okay. All right, so that's it for the technical explanations. So let's go back to Jan.
Thank you very much, Hans. I hope this is clear to everybody. Please do participate. We do this together. This is a co-creation. In the previous webinars, we learned that strengthening our digital strategy in most of the bus companies is seen as one of the major ways to come out of this crisis and to come out even stronger, as I said. We're very happy to partner in this series of webinars on the comeback of the coach industry with CheckMyBus. I would like to introduce Marc Hofmann, who's the founder of CheckMyBus and who's also a Busworld Academy expert. Marc, very welcome. Floor is yours.
So just unmuted. Thank you, Jan. Welcome also from my side. Great audience here. We have over 50 countries that are actually in this webinar. And Hannes, if you might bring up the slides, that would be great. So before actually kicking off the customer journey, I would just like to show everyone a picture that I found on LinkedIn, and which I think is so true in so many different ways. You see us all there on a small island. Someone says there, be sure to wash your hands and all will be well. And we see three big tsunami waves actually that are rolling over us or will roll over us. One is the COVID wave that everyone sees at the horizon or sees already basically crashing, and there's a crisis. Everyone knows about this. And there's a second wave coming, which here in this picture is called recession. And I think we can all be sure that there will be a recession coming. How strong, we don't know yet. This actually, I think, for the bus business is a challenge, but on the other hand, can also be an opportunity. Think about people shifting from private cars, which is always an investment, to actually buses, as an example. And the largest of these tsunami waves is the climate change. And this year looks like it will be the hottest again in history. So that wave is there. And I think everyone who is in this virtual room is part of the solution. So we all in the bus industry, we can help actually to change this game and overcome this problem. But of course, that requires us to come out stronger, and that will also require us to further boost our digital skills. And that is one of the reasons why we set up the series of webinars, bringing success cases and expert speakers from all across the world to share actually that knowledge and support everyone in this business to come out stronger. We use a customer journey, or we created a simple customer journey that we will use for all of the webinars also in the future. You see these beautiful blue bubbles and the arrows, and the idea is actually that each of these touch point supports the other touch point, and we all have to spin this wheel. So starting with the demand, of course, that means understanding the needs of the user, setting up a network, smart demand planning. There's a lot of digital topics involved, and I'm very happy that we have National Express here with John Boughton as a speaker who has a really big, or had a really big challenge actually to restart one of the largest networks in bus industry from the scratch. So this is something we will hear about, and I'm very sure that he used quite some smart tools and mechanisms to do this. Moving further in the customer journey, of course, it's key to have an attractive offer, and that attractive offer can be boosted digitally. It's also about smart pricing, especially in times of COVID. I think a lot of people ask themselves the question, what is the right price? And then, of course, of acquiring users. And we know that some users are doubtful to come back, some aren't, and we have to have the right opportunity for the right user group. So I'm very happy to actually have Max on board in the webinar, who will talk about dynamic pricing. Oliver Wyman is an international consultancy with a very strong mobility practice. So I think we will hear quite some interesting examples on this. Very few words on CheckMyBus. For those who don't know us, we are a global search engine for buses. And of course, with that, we can help actually to bring the attractive offer of any operator to a global audience. We always say that the multi-channel approach for user acquisition is the best one. So everyone should work or use all channels that are profitable, be it OTAs, be it Google, be it social media, whatsoever, of course, also including us, as all of these channels have different advantages. Moving further in the customer journey, of course, once the user is on board, it is really important to create a formidable user experience, to have the user come back, to have the user convert, to bring the user in the bus. And very happy to have Moblity ADO here. It's a company with 80 years of experience, but now actually transforming fully into the digital world. And with Joel, we have someone here who is actually one of the driving people in the company to push that forward. And I think you will have very interesting information stories how Mobility RDO is doing this. We don't have anything on loyalty and retention. That doesn't mean that this is very important, because it's the key actually to keep the users once you have it. And spinning back the circle, last but not least, we have Zeelo on board, not 80 years of experience, but a company that's just a few years old, and who is one of the few companies which is actually stating, well, Corona actually accelerated our business. So I think you'll be very curious to hear this at the end of the webinar. Barak will explain more about what Zeelo is doing. It's basically about on-demand business, but also they changed and adjusted their business into a new segment, which I think is an option that many of us could consider in these special times. And then before actually handing over the virtual stage to John, I'd like to give it back to Jan, who is coming up with an interesting poll and asking for your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marc. Thank you for setting up the context and referring to the customer journey, which will be the leitmotif during all the upcoming webinars that we do together with CheckMyBus. So thank you very much for this introduction. Indeed, Hans, if you could show us the first poll, ladies and gentlemen. I will ask your participation by answering these questions. Now, the first question is, do you believe that passengers will come back fast after restarting the business? Rephrasing this question would mean, do you think we will be at 100% of the pre-corona level in usage in, let's say, a period of 1 year? If you think that we will be at the pre-corona level within 1 year, please click yes. No, in the other case. The other questions are quite clear. I'll give you like 1 minute to answer these questions. It's important to know what you think. All right, like 10 more seconds. Okay. Hans, can you show us the results for that question? So first question, only 33% thinks that we will be back at the pre-corona level within a period of 1 year. So the consequences of this crisis will last longer. Do you consider that implementing dynamic pricing is an opportunity for the business? Yes, very clearly. About 90% of you do think so. And I cannot see, let me see if I can, I cannot see the results for the third question. But anyway, the results will be on the Busworld Academy website from tomorrow onwards. So thank you very much for participating in this. There will be a follow-up on this poll. Let's start the webinar. I'd like to introduce John Boughton, the Commercial Director for National Express. And as Marc said, John, you've been challenged quite a bit during these last couple of months. What can we learn from the experiences at National Express in the UK?
Jan, thanks very much. And interesting, that poll. I'm hoping to be able to give people maybe a bit more confidence on the answer to that question. Do you believe customers will come back fast after restarting your business? So I will hopefully go through some of the lessons that we've learned. We've restarted, and it's been there's been a lot of lessons we've learned. Before I get on to that, however, I just wanted to very quickly give people a flavour of who we are, because I appreciate that not everybody around the world knows who National Express is. So Hannes, if we can move on to the first slide, that would be great. So we are National Express. We're the UK's national coach operator. We have about 22 million journeys, customer journeys per annum. About 700 destinations in our network, operated on a fleet of around 550 vehicles. And we're mainly a leisure operator, so carrying people to see friends and family, carrying people to airports, festivals, events, and so on. So this time of year is a pretty big and important time of year for us. as with everybody else, we were probably sailing along quite happily at the beginning of this year in the first quarter, only then to face a great big punch from COVID. Hannah, if we could go on to the next slide, in March. And we went from a national operator with 1,700 services per day to 0 in 13 days. And that is quite a remarkable and somewhat grim milestone for us. That'll be the first time in 48 years of our history that no vehicles are running on, none of our vehicles are running on the roads, and that date was the 6th of April. And of course, with no services comes no revenue, and obviously us and many others were in that situation as we first got hit with COVID-19. Now, I'm not going to talk about how we sort of managed there. What I want to do is fast forward 87 days to the 1st of July. So Hannah, if we could have the next slide, please. Because actually, I want to look at what's sort of gone right for us. Some things have gone wrong as well, but what's gone right for us, because we have had a pretty good start, and just go through some of the lessons very quickly in the short amount of time that we have. There is one lesson that I haven't written down, which is, my God, it is a lot easier to shut a network down than it is to start one up. And it's going to be a lot longer journey as well. So there are some rocky roads ahead. But yeah, there's lesson one. I think we probably already knew that one. So if we just go on to the first slide, Hannah, that would be great. So I'll start with an old cliche, nothing I like more than an old cliche, which is, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and rather than screwing your face up about the sour taste of everything. And once you sort of get through the shock of the revenue, of the 0 revenue, actually, very quickly as a business, we saw this as perhaps a once in a generation opportunity to rebuild our network in a new way, rebuild it with a new vision. And as a business that's been around for a long time, we had a lot of baggage, we had a lot of legacy, and we had this situation where the majority of our profitable, really good revenue was coming from a minority of services. So we've been able to take the opportunity to refocus our network where we get the most value out of it. And that's a very hard thing to do when you're in a steady state and you're looking at every pound of revenue, and when there are political considerations. When the network's gone and there is no revenue, you were able to rip it up and start again. And that's exactly what we did. Now, the big part of this is that was a very, very heavily data-driven approach to how we restart our network. We've probably done the biggest data analysis exercise that we've ever done in our company over the last 2 months, looking at all the sources of data, internally, externally, search data, our booking trends over the last 5 years, to give us the best information we can get about the shape of network that should come. Hannah, if you could just click forward. And there was a cool bit of data that we were able to use. We partnered with a business that looks at mass people movement using mobile phone data. So this is based on 1 to 2 million mobile phone users in the UK. And what it tells you is when somebody arrives, in this case at Gatwick Airport, it shows you where their final destination is, where do they finally end up. And using this data, along with all of our own data and that of our third-party partners, you're able to get a really confident picture of where the demand is going to be for your services going forward. So the lesson here was we really took the opportunity to do something cool and to create a much fitter, leaner network, and one that was more modular and one that was more easy to scale. And this will become important later. That's the first lesson. Second lesson is around, and I'll let Hannah just catch up here, is around this. An apprehensive customer will not book. So customers like us have had to go through an emotional sort of acceptance curve, through disbelief, all the way through resistance, relief, and apprehension. And we recognized very early that we had to empathize with our customers to get over that resistance, to provide relief, and to reduce apprehension. And if we didn't do that, then they wouldn't come back to us and they wouldn't book with us. being apprehensive is something that continues to be a serious issue for us, because with second waves and local lockdowns and quarantine and so on, customers remain apprehensive. So this guided us in two different directions. Next slide, Hannah's, please. The first one was, we decided that we would be the leader in customer well-being. The biggest question that we thought customers would have, and I think we were right, is, am I going to be safe? Will National Express keep me safe? And we set out very early to go further than anybody else, to be the benchmark for what great looks like in terms of a safe network. And we put in place a huge program of works across our stations and our fleet to make sure that customers felt safe and felt reassured. And you can see a couple of examples here. There's a guy who's fogging the inside of the coach with antiviral solution. That happens a couple of times a day on every coach. And we temperature check our customers before they board. And there's loads of other things too. The second key thing, next slide, Hannah's, please, was around uncertainty. We are in I mean, this is the definition of uncertain times, and customers saying, is my trip going to go ahead? And if it doesn't go ahead, can I get my money back? And we wanted to make sure that we can answer to the customers, well, if it doesn't go ahead, we will offer you the maximum flexibility. And our feeling was, if we offer you flexibility, then we will first of all get you to come with us, and then we will get you to stay with us. So we have made sure that we've softened our terms and conditions. We give people money back if they're directly affected by coronavirus through a local lockdown, for example, no quibble. And we have avoided a lot of the negative publicity that has perhaps gone with airlines and some train companies who have been a bit difficult in returning customers' money. We wanted to be absolutely flexible. I think the final thing to say here is that our digital channels, in terms of getting these messages across, were absolutely critical to our story. And we relied very, very heavily on social media to get this story out to customers and to get them talking about us. And interestingly, we've seen our NPS increase from 44 to 51 over the last 4 weeks in this time of great disruption, which we're very pleased with. So, final lesson was, when that demand comes in, then we've got to react incredibly fast. And the first bit was, well, we've changed our network to be more modular. We can start small and then grow in whichever direction we like based on where the demand is coming in, still using our data to tell us where that demand is coming, when it's coming. And then we've aimed to move very quickly. So we aim to get a complete new route from a new destination to a new destination in less than 5 days. And that's preparing vehicles, drivers, coach stations, and our board sits 3 times a week to help make those decisions very, very quickly. What we've seen in July is that we've increased our seats offered every week by 100%. Each week, and we continue to do that as we go into August. So every time we're putting the extra capacity in, we're seeing that demand come through pent-up demand and through what we think we've created ourselves. So that's good. So the result of all this, if we can move on to the final slide, nearly final slide, is that I can't tell you anything at all, I'm afraid, because we are a public company in a list in a closed period. So I'm sorry to give you an anticlimax. All I would say, if I tell you anything, I'd be shot by my finance director. So I can't tell you. However, suffice to say, we have started much better than we predicted we would. Each time we've increased supply, we've seen demand follow. We've started to get to the stage where we're starting to fine-tune things in terms of pricing, which Max, I think, is going to talk about shortly. And we've been really pleased with the progress so far. So it's gone well so far. We've prepared really well, but there will be rocky roads ahead. And this is not going to be a smooth path out of here. And as I said right at the beginning, a lot easier to shut it down than to restart. So we do have a long period ahead. But coming back to the poll question, things have come back much, much faster than we thought they would. So I would urge everybody to be optimistic. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for your optimism and for the message you bring here to us. Compared to pre-corona, John, at what percentage of the offer are you today? If all National Express services pre-corona were 100%, And what offer are you today?
We're in the region, it depends on where you look, of 20 to 30%.
Good.
Now, that's after 4 weeks. So are we pleased with that? Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay, that's very clear. And we also see that National Express is making great efforts to restore the confidence of the passenger. This would also include, I think, increased costs that you make with a lesser revenue compared to before. How should I understand this balance?
You understand it absolutely right. We see this as a necessary investment in order to rebuild our revenue back to pre-COVID times. I think we will in the end see a slower recovery if we didn't make that investment. What I agree with is it is a bit of a leap of faith. We've got to believe that this investment we're making now will pay dividends in future, and that is how we've approached this, to say, if we get customers reassured, if we invest in what we think is investing in their loyalty, then this will pay us back in future months and years.
Okay. In the UK, what is the occupancy rate that is allowed? Are 100% full buses allowed in the UK?
The guidance is not particularly clear. I think that will be familiar to many people. We are working at roughly 50% capacity at the moment, and that will gradually increase as we get smarter about how we group people on coaches. But generally, we try and have at least a 1 meter social distance between groups of customers.
Okay, so you go to, let's say, about a 50% occupancy.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. That was very interesting. I'm quite sure that we'll come back to you with more questions at this time. Let me go to Max Alexander, representing Oliver Wyman. And as Marc already said, you are an international consultancy with quite some experience in aviation and rail as well, specifically on dynamic pricing and yield management. What can you teach the coach sector, Max Alexander, from your experiences in the rail and aviation sector?
Yeah, so we will. I will try to walk us through a little bit of some of the core concepts of dynamic pricing. And I think the sentiment in the beginning was quite right, that dynamic pricing will probably have a tremendous impact after COVID, not only from a perspective of how you can maximize your revenues, but also in terms of steering demand towards capacity which might be underutilized and which might be able to pick up some more demand given social distancing constraints. So I will try to walk you through some of the core concepts. I mean, given the short amount of time that we have today, we won't be able to probably go into a whole lot of detail, but if I can answer any questions afterwards, I'll be more than happy to do so. So Hannes, if you could walk us to the next page, please. So maybe let's start with the question: why should we as a bus industry think about pricing in the first place? And this is an illustrative picture from a pre-COVID time, where we looked at a Paris to London route in a workday 8 to 10 a.m. departure range, so quite narrow time window. We had 7 different connections here, and you could see the cheapest one priced at 19 euros, at the bottom. It had a traveling time of 8 hours, and the next cheapest competitor was at roughly 25 euros with a traveling time of 9 hours. So that means that the cheapest competitor here actually undercut the next cheapest one by 25%, despite having a comparable, if not even better, service offering. And while this is an example, it's quite a typical picture that we've seen, and we've come to the conclusion that the potential from superior pricing in the bus industry is quite tremendous. And I will also give you at least 1 or 2 figures towards the end, what the typical uplift potential is that we see from other industries if proper pricing, dynamic pricing is implemented. So if we go to the next page, please. Where are we coming from if we talk about dynamic pricing? There's a classical trade-off between obviously having a higher price per passenger or higher load factor. And the concept of dynamic pricing, sometimes also referred to as yield management or revenue management, is essentially to say, how can I optimize my revenues by how can I optimize the formula of yield times load factor? And that's exactly what dynamic pricing is about. Let's go through a simple example on the next page, please. So this is an example taken from an airline, but we could apply it in the very similar way to the bus industry as well. Let's assume a case where we have an airplane flying from A to B, which has fixed costs of roughly 30,000 euros for this trip. We ignore any variable costs here, which are negligible anyhow. If we assume that this airline could only sell its tickets for one price, what would happen? Yeah? If we look at the price demand function on the left-hand side, if we were to assume it could only set a price of 200 euros, then 100 passengers would book this trip, and 100 passengers times 200 euros would give you overall revenues of 20,000, which would lead to a loss of 10,000 euros. If we assume you would set the price at 400 euros and you wouldn't be able to set another price point, you would have only 50 passengers booking, price would be higher. 50 passengers times 400 euros again gives you 20,000 euros in revenues, and again a loss of 10,000. The last example is if the price was 600 euros, you'd only have 25 passengers willing to pay that amount of money for such a trip. You'd end up with revenues of 15,000, make a 15,000 euro loss. So taking this simplified but honestly quite realistic example, if airlines could only choose one point, they'd probably make a lot all the time. So the answer to that obviously is having multiple price points. If we go to the next page, this is what we've demonstrated here. Essentially, dynamic pricing means you charge different price points to different customer groups. And so here we say there are 50 passengers who are willing to who we can charge only 200 euros. We have another 25 passengers who we are able to charge 400 euros, and there are additional 25 passengers who are even willing to pay 600 euros. And if we add all those revenues up, we come to a total revenue, a figure of 35,000, which gives us a healthy 5,000 euro profit on this trip. Now, obviously, this requires different instruments. One thing I won't go into much detail here is that obviously you need to be able to fence the different customer segments that you have, be it by limitations of flexibility, by Saturday night stay rules, so that you can only buy a round trip at a cheaper price if you stay over a weekend, because that allows an airline to fence private from business demand, and so on and so forth. Not going to go into this right now, but important to know that you need to be able to fence the different customer segments, of course. What is important in addition to that is on the next page, is you need to understand the concepts of opportunity cost on the one hand and willingness to pay on the other hand. Opportunity cost essentially means how much more can I earn if I don't sell a seat right now, but I wait for another passenger to book it later for a higher price. That, of course, requires me to have a quite good picture of how many passengers are willing to book a seat on a trip at which point of time. And that requires you to be able to have somewhat proper forecasting. The other concept is the one of willingness to pay, and that's essentially independent of supply and demand. What is the willingness to pay of different types of passengers, which can be influenced either by the fact if someone is traveling for leisure purposes or for business purposes. It can also be influenced by competitive rates and so on and so forth. That typically can be done with a lot of analytics for industries who are not as mature in dynamic pricing. A lot of that can also be done by codified experience. Let's stay on the left-hand side for a second and talk a little bit about forecasting and why forecasting is important and beneficial. And Hannes, if I may ask you to go to the next page, please. Proper forecasting is important, at least from my perspective, for four reasons. The first one is if you are able to forecast properly which type of customers book trips on your route, then it does allow you to charge higher prices to later booking customers, and you do not out too cheaply in the beginning. The second one is condition price-sensitive customers to book as early as possible, so you can educate them on your pricing policy, and that facilitates you or makes it easier for you to segment earlier booking price-sensitive demand from later booking higher yielding demand. Yeah. The third one is you minimize irritation, because if you have proper forecasting, as said, you can educate your customers that prices become step by step more expensive throughout the booking period, and you do not have to open and close booking classes at different points of time or make different price points, higher and lower price points available back and forth, which leads to a lot of irritation and frustration with customers. So proper forecasting avoids that as well. And finally, forecasting is a very analytically driven exercise that typically supports a lot the learning process within an organization, because you can improve the way how you structure products, which features are offered to which customer groups, with which flexibility rules around it, and other features around it. And typically that there's an important aspect of linking forecasting, pricing, and product in that regard. Why does it make sense to do all this? How much dividend does it pay? At airlines, we typically see, when we go into an airline and help them optimize their forecasting, we see revenue uptakes of 1 to 2% from better forecasting. That being said, airlines are typically already quite well educated on forecasting, and from our experience in the bus industry, the revenue uplift can be even higher, because typically the degree of sophistication in forecasting is not that high. If you combine that with other elements like optimizing your understanding of the willingness to pay of different customers and ancillary revenue pricing, etc., then the uplift can be in the range of 4 to 5% in revenues. And since this is really then improved pricing, the bottom line impact is quite substantial. So I think my last page is then the one about asking how sophisticated is the bus industry already with regards to forecasting and dynamic pricing. Again, this is an illustrative example from two European markets, one from Berlin and Amsterdam, the other one Manchester. And essentially what this picture tells us, while some markets are not mature, others are way more mature. On the left-hand side, if you look at the Berlin-Amsterdam example, you see there are overall, the number of price points is not that high. And you do see that different players, in particular player number 2, is actually starting to price high in the beginning on the right-hand side, where we have around 450 hours before departure. And then prices actually go down closer to departure. Apparently, this is a player who then realized, or who tried to sell seats at a quite high price, then realized demand is not picking up as expected, and then started to make cheaper price points available, which for different reasons you probably do not want to see in your booking curve. Whereas on the right-hand side, and this may be good news for John, I'm sure National Express is one of the players here. There's a much more sophisticated picture. You can see typically players start with lower prices for quite a period of time, give an opportunity to price-sensitive customers to book early, and then when it comes closer to departure, people really have a need to travel quickly within the next day or two, the prices have become much higher. And this also on the right-hand side is the typical picture that we see with more sophisticated airlines. So that was my last page. I hope it provided a nice introduction around some of the core concepts of dynamic pricing. I'm happy to take any questions.
Indeed, thank you so much, Max Alexander. This was very interesting. Your statistics were quite clear and everything. But how does a coach company who does not apply dynamic pricing yet, how do they start? What are the first steps to make? How do we move on this?
So I think there are, I mean, obviously, and you know this way better than I do, but the bus and coach industry is quite fragmented, and I think if you have larger players who have the capabilities to do data analytics, the situation is very different to smaller companies. But overall, I think what we've seen is you do have to have a certain level of confidence of data management and data analytics. But what you can do quite nicely is you can run experiments. Yeah, you can test out what is the willingness to pay of your customers, and simply take records of which price points work at which period of time, and then you play around with that, and you learn from that. And improve it stepwise. For companies that are larger and have data capabilities, you can automate that much more. You can set up professional experiments across a larger set of routes. You can set up comparable routes and learn from that.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of our attendees also is asking the question. Now, since the pre-booking period in the coach sector, which is much shorter than it is in aviation or in hotel management, how does that influence dynamic pricing policies?
I mean, it does influence it quite a bit. From my perspective, we won't see as many different price points as we see it in airlines, for example. But I think the result cannot be that we say we only stick to 1 or 2 price points. The question is, in a time range which is quite short, can you have 3, 4, 5 different price points that you can test against? And probably also forecasting won't be as sophisticated as you know it in the airline industry. So you have to be much more pragmatic about it. But to be honest, also from our experience, the booking periods differ quite a bit by market, also continent by continent, and you will have to look at different markets and routes, how to tailor it optimally. But overall, I don't think that should be an excuse to say we cannot do any forecasting. It just has to be probably a bit more pragmatic than in other industries.
Okay. Does dynamic pricing increase the number of complaints that the operator is receiving due to the fact that he's getting a price that he was not expecting?
So we haven't seen complaints as in customers really calling up and say, hey, I paid this much last week and now I'm paying more this week. Not necessarily, but what we have seen quite a bit is irritation if you don't do it properly. So if you don't do any forecasting and you randomly make higher and then lower and then higher and then lower price points again, customers feel like it becomes completely random, and that's again why we believe educating customers on your pricing policy is important. And I think you can communicate quite nicely with marketing that you say, if you want to have a good deal, you need to book early. That typically can work quite well, but there's a bit of education required around it.
Okay. How do you apply dynamic pricing in regulated markets, where minimum prices are fixed and known? How does it work there?
I mean, if it's completely regulated, of course, then there's very little you can do. I think the interesting question brings us a bit back to the COVID situation that we're facing right now. There are other industries who have used pricing as a way to steer demand towards off-peak times, for example. So if you look at the Swiss Railroad, for example, SBB, they've been using this concept for years now because they always have an issue on the Zurich-Geneva and Zurich-Bern trains around 5 to 6 p.m. And so they try to steer their passengers to trains that leave either earlier or later than that. And pricing is a good way to do that, of course. And so right now, I think also bus companies in regulated markets who want to introduce dynamic pricing can use that as an argument to improve their negotiation position. But again, if everything is completely regulated, it's regulated full stop. So don't want to make any promises I couldn't keep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Max Alexander. It was very interesting. So, time for our second poll, ladies and gentlemen. Hannes, if you could show the questions, please read the questions, answer very quickly, and while you do that, this is on how you consider digital strategy important in your company. While you do that, let me say that the results of these polls will be available on the Busworld Academy website from tomorrow onwards. I'll give you like 20 seconds more. Okay. Hannes, can you show us the results? Okay, so it is considered as important, maybe not the first priority, but definitely the second priority in this kind of period anyway. Thank you so much, Hannes. Let's go to our next speaker. Let's go to Mexico, to Joe Cárdenas, who is the transition coach, digital transition coach for Moblity ADO, running several bus brands in several countries. Joel, how can digitalization help us in this crisis period?
Thank you, John. Today I'm going to talk about this digital transformation in Moblity ADO. It's a general overview about what we are doing and the first steps in this digital transformation for Moblity ADO. But first, maybe some of you know Moblity ADO as ADO Group or Grupo ADO. So we changed our brand 1.5 years ago. So now we are Moblity ADO. And to understand the way to this digital transformation, we changed our mission and also our vision. So we have a new mission for Moblity ADO to improve the quality of life through mobility solutions, and our vision to become the leading global company in mobility solutions for people, companies, and governments by 2027. So we are going to focus our strategy in people, governments, and companies. So that's our first steps, changing our brand and also in this journey to the digital transformation. So the next step is to how we understand this digital transformation. And for Moblity ADO, this digital transformation is to improve the user experience through technology and intelligent use of data. So we are going to base this digital transformation in strategy in 4 pillars. The first one is to be a customer-centric company. So I'm going to talk about this user experience. The second pillar is to change our culture. So we are working a lot in the company to change this culture to be more agile and to give our customers a better experience. The third pillar is to have a data-driven decisions and to generate new technology and a new experience with data. And the fourth one is to implement easy-to-use technology to our customers. So for now, we have this new brand, new mission, new vision, and the understanding of our digital transformation. So we need to move to start working with this digital transformation. So we choose our first project in digital transformation, and we choose our e-commerce, our front ends, our web page, and also our iOS and Android application to start working on that. But we have a big challenge. We have a backend technology to improve, to generate a new UI and UX experience, and to give our customers this customer-centric, and for us to implement this data-driven. So we move to ask ourselves, who is our customer? To implement this new customer experience, we need to know who is our customer, and we start making this kind of questions to us. What do they want? What do they wish? What do they need? And also, what do they travel? What do they travel with us? And we figured it out that we don't know these kind of questions. So because at the past we used to sell tickets, but maybe we don't know really well who is our customer. So we decide to use design thinking to try to answer this kind of questions. And after several workshops with our customers, with co-workers, with C-level directors, etc., we start making these workshops with design thinking, trying to understand who is our customer and answering these kind of questions. So after several workshops, we create these archetypes, 7 archetypes for people and 5 archetypes for between companies and governments. So with these archetypes, now we are able to understand who is our customer, why they are traveling with us. We define some characteristics about our archetypes, our customers. So here I have an example of one of our archetypes. She's Stephanie. She's a tourist. Maybe some of you are going to be very similar with she when you travel here to Mexico, to Cancun, and also to Mexico City. And Stephanie, she has some preference, also what she needs, contact points in this customer journey, also what she wants, and some characteristics about loyalty to our brand, digital capacity, and other applications that she uses for traveling, how she feels about safety and availability of the trips. So here's an example of these archetypes, and now we answer these kind of questions with the design thinking. But that's not the only thing that we did with design thinking. We also create our customer journeys. We create 2 customer journeys for tourists, and 3 customer journeys for urban and long haul, and another one for a custom service that we provide. So with these customer journeys, here we have an example. We split these customer journeys in different phases. The exploration, when you explore about any option that you could have for your trip, the buying process before the trip, on the trip, the customer service, and also the retention. And we identify some activities that are happening in each phase. Also, what our customer needs in every single step. And very important, what kind of channels we are using in each step to interact or to communicate with our customers. So in the digital transformation office, we focus a lot on our web pages, in our applications, because that's the reason we want to improve and focus on this first project in our e-commerce. And very important thing is about the feelings of our customers, the emotions. And we focus a lot in our pain points. So in these pain points are the things that we need to improve through our applications, our web pages. So it's very important to look these feelings in our customers, because here we have the answers that we need to improve to our customers in this customer journey. So when we finish to answer this kind of questions, who is our customer, the customer journey, what they need, what they want, what they wish, and the pain points, well, we need to start working in the development. So we are trying to change, and we are working on that in our culture. So we change the way we are working with an agile mindset. We are implementing a Scrum frameworks, also the Agile Manifesto, making several workshops about culture, change management, management 3.0, working with work tools like Jira, Microsoft Teams, DevOps. We are working on that. Obviously, every single sprint, we fail, but the important thing is that we are learning every single day, every single sprint in the development of this experience to our customers. We are learning a lot, and we are changing our culture. So for me, this one is very important, because we are changing the way we are working, and also our culture in the digital transformation office, and also in all the company. So after several weeks working with this agile mindset, we finish and we launch our new e-commerce and our new applications. So for now, we are more nearby, more intelligent, more effective, more accurate, and more secure. And this one was one of our of the features that, or the pain points that our customers needs and they wish. So we try to implement this kind of features to be more nearby, intelligent, effective, accurate, and secure with our customers. So it's a short presentation, but believe me that it's a long trip, trying new ways to improve our features and define this new user experience to our customers in our webpage and also in our applications. So for me, that's all. So if you want to look our webpage, please feel free to visit us as ado.com.mx, or also scan our QR code. Also to get our applications, they are available only in some regions, but well, you can visit our apps and also our web pages. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joel. Very interesting. You did all this process during this crisis period?
Well, yes, we did all this process, and we are making a new customer journey, and also archetypes. We are upgrading our archetypes because our customer change, and the needs of the trips also change. So we are upgrading this customer journey and also the archetype, because as John said, now the people are looking about the healthy of the trip, and they are worried about health. So we need to change this customer journey and also the archetypes, just to to get our customers this healthy issue.
Okay, thank you so much. Just for my information, Joel, the bus brands that you run, do they apply dynamic pricing?
We are making some kind of this. We try to give this data driven to our customers. So we are making this kind of decision, implementing dynamic prices.
Okay, thank you so much. Looking at the time, we have like 10 minutes to go. So let's fast move on to the last speaker, to Barak, who is the head of the international expansion for Zeelo, working in the UK and in other countries. Barak, how do you survive this crisis? What do you do within Zeelo?
So yes, thank you very much. Happy to be here. Happy to have listened to everybody before me. Very interesting so far, let's say. Zeelo, I'll explain who we are in a second. We've been doing okay during this Corona time. We'll talk about that as well. And let's go, and I'll explain who Zeelo is.
Okay. We learned from Marc that you even expanded your business during this crisis.
Yes, we have. We've been able to use our tools, our digital tools, and our offer to expand our services, focusing on a specific demographic, which I'll explain in a second. I'll leave you in suspense. And yes, we are seeing an increase both in our UK operations and in our South African operations. Let's start. Thank you. So Zeelo is a technology company offering smart and safe transportation, focusing on commute in the peri-urban space with buses. And I wanted just a second to break down this long sentence, because it is important to break it down. We're a technology company. We produce tech. We do not have any buses. We do not have any drivers. Coach operator like yourself are our partners. We come and are the tech layer over the operations that I'll explain in a second. Offering smart. Smart is that we have an algorithm that defines what are the most efficient routes for our clients. We also have mobile apps, a rider mobile app and driver mobile app, which I'll talk about later as well, but they enable us to have all our operations digitally. Safe is everything that has to do with Corona. Again, touch on that in the future, but we are 100% safe. And we focus on the commute in the peri-urban space with buses. So commute is our operations focus on bringing people to and from workplaces, schools. That's what we largely focus on. That would be the peak times during the morning, during the evening, and shift times. Peri-urban space is semi-rural. That's where all the business parks are. That's where all the employment centers are, a bit outside of the city. We don't like getting into cities, and that's because we deploy buses. And when I say buses, I actually mean coaches, buses, from a Mercedes Sprinter to a double-decker. And I think that is what makes us unique in this industry, because there are not a lot of digital players that work with coaches. Along the routes, we've been seeing a 70% switch from a car to a Zeelo bus. We're able to switch 70% of our target audience. We've been able to do that by providing a very easy to use direct service. And we take an average of 30 cars off roads, which translates into about 80% reductions in emissions. And that's way before we started talking about electric buses. I don't want to get into this slide too much. I just want to explain, and I think the main takeaway from this would be that we are a one-stop shop for commuting. So you would have on number 1 and 2, you would have our intelligent routing algorithm and our mobile apps. That's the tech side of our business. Like any other mobile app, you can book, you can pay, you can see the vehicle. Driver has an app. It shows him what the route is, who is supposed to come on. If you use the Uber app, it's pretty much the same thing. And the other 3 segments are the service side. So when we approach a client, and a client could be anything from an office, from a MasterCard, for example, or to a logistics center, we usually subcontract or work with current coach operators. We data share with the employees that we work with, and we have our 24/7 customer service. So we are a one-stop shop that is very easy and very convenient to our clients. Again, those clients are the B2B, they're the businesses, they are the business parks, they are the schools that we work with. And we thought we were ready when Corona happened, but obviously we weren't. And we see in the first week and a half, same as you, John, everybody left. Offices, schools, football clubs, all down, all gone away in a matter of a week and a half. And there was one light in the end of the tunnel, a unique demographic, which is essential employees. These people that work in the logistic industry, they work in warehouses, they work in distribution centers. They are continuing to go to work, and not only are they continuing, they are the fuel of the economy, the new economy, and they are being recruited at higher numbers. So you see Amazon and XPO and a lot of logistics players actually recruiting more and more people. And those people don't like to use public transportation. One, because I know at least in the UK government, but I'm pretty sure all across Europe, they have been told to stay away from public transportation. And they decided they don't want to. And that actually created an opportunity for us, because those people still have to get to work, obviously. Some of them can't afford a car, so they don't have access to cars, but they don't want to use public transportation. So we identified a real need with riders. And then businesses are worried as well. Because if you remember, about 2 months ago, Kentucky Fried Chicken had to stop its operations. Again, this is the UK. Just because a lot of people, about 100 people, got sick in one of the food preparation plants. And so all of these employers are very worried that somebody will get sick and then their operation, logistic, food, retail, doesn't matter, will stop. And this is actually the industry that is working. So they don't want to do that. So we have a real need from the rider, and then a real need from the employees. So we pivoted. Well, we don't pivoted, but we actually developed safe services for the benefits of riders and businesses. And what we did is, and again, a mixture of tech and service. So we took our app and we added contact tracing. So if you get sick and report it to us, we're able to know who else took rides with you and then report it back. We kept the number of seats. So you could only, if you see on the left-hand side of the example, you can actually book a specific seat within the bus, and then I'm able to maintain social distancing. This is, by the way, the example of how you maintain a 2-meter difference, 2-meter separation, which isn't a lot of seats on a bus. But we were able to maintain social distancing by keeping the number of seats and choosing a specific seat. contactless payment, which we had before. And that was the tech side of the solution. And the operational side of the solution, industry best practices. Obviously, we didn't invent anything real special here. Temperature check, antivirus sanitation, air filtration, protective equipment for drivers, but we made sure that it was all kept. And we've gained a number of clients. So Amazon, XPO Logistics, MasterCard, A is Avara Foods, which is the client that we got to keep, the client that was with us before Corona. And sharing a bit of the success. This is true to scale. That doesn't have any numbers. The left-hand side, this is true to scale, doesn't have any numbers. It's the UK revenue. So November 19, that's pre-Corona, and then March is even, it looks a bit even better than it was because we've had a lot of companies entering during the last week or a week and a half of March. All of those essential employees companies that I've talked about, but March could have been a lot worse if not for them. We only kept one or two clients from pre-Corona. And June numbers, which are much better. That's kind of like our new normal, same numbers in July. And this is us post-Corona, again, because of all these new companies that were introduced to us because of the Corona, and we were able to provide them with a service as well. We also used the opportunity to expand into Italy and the US. We've got a first client in Italy. And actually, while Joel was speaking, I got a Slack message. We have our first client in the US as well. So yeah, great news on that. We are expanding those two territories and planning to expand into Europe later on. Case study. I won't get into this too much. I want to actually talk about the pain points. And you see an operation, which is not one of our largest operations, 420 riders per week, but this is Amazon, which is one of the clients that we gained during this period. And like any other business, like any other logistic business, they are far away. They're located in somewhere outside of the city, hard to reach. Those areas usually don't have very good public transportation, especially now that people don't want to use public transportation. 420 riders per week, 6 service time that relates to the shifts. But let's talk about pain points, and let's talk about what those clients really care about. So one, work during the virus. It's bolded at the end of the screen. As I've said, they all want their operation to keep going. They don't want people in public transportation just because they interact with other people that aren't related to the job, to that specific workplace. It kind of increases the chances of them being sick, increases the chances of hurting the current operations. And then we have home to work schemes. That means that we pick people next to their house or somewhere central, and it's a direct ride to well, not the office, but where they work, to the distribution centers. And so that's one. Two is recruitment and retention pressures. So those places are far away. It's hard to get. People don't want to go and work there. And HR team being able to promise an easy commute is very helpful for them to actually recruit a new personnel, and they are recruiting. The only industry that is recruiting, I think. Those two pain points kind of replaced two other pain points. One was a parking place shortage, which is still a problem, by the way, in the US, less in Europe, where you don't have enough parking space. It's less of a problem now in Europe. And it kind of replaced another pain point, which was everything that has to do with CO2 emissions and sustainability. Not that it's not important. There are other things that are more important to our clients right now. Looking forward, we are investing in 2 new product SaaS services. One is Zeeride, which is a technology platform. That's actually a software as a service, white label platform for coach operators. We are currently piloting it in the UK with a number of clients. The idea is to allow coach operators to use our mobile apps, our rider and driver mobile apps, and the back end behind it in order to operate their services. This is not a back end / operations software that you are familiar with. We keep away from that. We're focused on the rider side. So that's one thing we're working on. And the other thing is supplementing public transportation with coach operators. So going to industrial parks and having the commute of the employees of that industrial park managed by us, where public transportation isn't good enough to do that. And that happens quite a lot. Thank you. Open for questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Barak. Very, very interesting story. Just from my understanding, is this a B2B service that you're offering? I mean, does the client charter the buses? Or is it a fixed line between a city center and an industrial zone where you offer B2C services, where the passenger books his ticket and pays?
So it's a B2B2C model, and I'll explain. We always have a customer, which is either a business or a school. So that will always be the case. But we employ a rebate model. So you are, as a business, you are able to determine that the employer pays some of the employees pay part of the expenses, and then the financial cost is divided between the employer and the employee. But it is essentially a B2B business where we identify a need with the client, and then we have 2 options. One is we collect the postcodes or the address data from the employer, then understanding, this is for the routing algorithm, then understanding which routes we need to deploy. Or we can, as John gave an example, we can also work with external data providers to analyze cell phone data and then determine it for ourselves. So it really depends, but it is a B2B2C model in that sense.
So the financial risk for the seats that are not occupied is not with the bus operator or with Zeelo.
No. So if we go into a business that has no work bus service, we subcontract the coach operators. They give us the price. They are 100% secure. Okay. If we come to a company that already has some sort of bus operations, we have a pricing model where we keep the coach operator. We never replace a coach operator, and we come on top as a technology layer.
Okay, I do understand.
Yeah.
Was the business the same before Corona, or did you develop this just for this crisis period?
So, well, we did develop. So everything that has to do with contact on the tech side, everything that has to do with contact tracing, everything that has to do with book a specific seat is a result of a need that we identified during the last couple of months.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the type of business that has been growing these last weeks.
It's the only kind of business that has been going. So offices aren't coming back. Schools, I really don't know if they would come back. But yeah, logistic, warehouse, distribution centers, that's the industry that's moving.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Barak, for your presentation. Alice, can we have the last poll? Ladies and gentlemen, we just want to see if during this webinar you have changed your mind on some of the subjects. So here is the first poll again. Can you please fill it in quite fast, just your first idea? And we'll show the changes in your opinions tomorrow on the Busworld Academy website. And I think, Marc, it will also be available on the CheckMyBus website with the link as well. Yes. Yes, indeed. Like 10 more seconds. Thank you. Hans, can you show us the results? I remember that the answers to the first question were quite pessimistic, but they are less pessimistic now. John, you did a great job. Your optimism has worked in this webinar. Thank you so much. As said, we'll publish this all on the websites from tomorrow onwards. The recording of this webinar will be available, the presentations will be available, and the polls will be available. The answers to the questions you have been asking will be available from next week onwards, but they will be there, and each and every question will be answered by the speakers. Time for me to wrap up. Thank you all. We've been about 450 attendees in this webinar. I hope to see you all again on September the 16th, where we have other cases coming from the bus and coach sector. We will be referring to intermodal services. We will be referring to other kinds of digital solutions that have been applied to grow your business or to change your business to make it stronger. We have speakers confirmed already from Italy, from Peru. We'll find them from North America. We'll find them from other parts of Europe and more to the east as well. Thank you very much to all the speakers today. Thank you so much, Marc Hofmann and CheckMyBus, for partnering with us in this series of webinars. Please, ladies and gentlemen, do all note that on the 16th, part 2 of this Coach Comeback webinar series will be there, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, European time, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in Latin America, and a bit later in the day in the East from there. Let me just finish by saying that tomorrow, 7:30, we have the India webinar focused on the bus and coach sector, urban services in India. And next week, next Tuesday at 9 a.m. European time, we have the China webinar on the restart of bus services in China. This might be quite interesting as well, because China is a little further in the phase compared to the Corona crisis. So there's things we can learn from these bus services as well. Thank you so much. See you again on the 16th. Bye. Thanks to all the speakers. We'll be in touch. Bye. Thank you.